But do these drugs work in normal people? Do they only work in diseased people to help restore a balance to normality? Can they really cause a normal individual to suddenly catapult into a supernormal area of intelligence? Now, there are studies that suggest that in rats this may be true. You could get intelligent rats by giving these drugs. But in human beings, it really has not been proven.
Well, that's an interesting mechanism that you're describing. The possibility that ordinary humans are missing something. That, for example, Larry Niven has played with the idea that we're all missing this vitamin, which, if we had, would make us immortal. Are we all missing some chemical substance that would make us more intelligent? Are we all retarded and could be restored to normalcy if we could only find out that stuff?
Well, one would suspect that we would have to have evolved in order to be considered to be missing the stuff. We'd have to have sort of evolved in an environment in which it existed.
Well, let me give you a funny example. When deep sea divers go under greater pressure, more of the nitrogen that they breathe gets dissolved in their blood. And at sufficient depth, they suffer nitrogen narcosis. They get very silly, very stupid, and they start making fatal mistakes. We are breathing an atmosphere which is 4/5 nitrogen. Are we all suffering from a small degree of nitrogen narcosis? Is it possible that breathing pure oxygen makes you more intelligent?
Oh, highly unlikely.
Well,
I mean,
they've done some research.
First of all,
don't they?
we evolved at this particular level of partial pressure, and because of that, it's highly unlikely that we would have evolved in a way that was inimical to our own interests. You would think that, again, Darwin would suggest that we have evolved the way we have because that is the best way to evolve.
I think you can enrich an atmosphere with oxygen to a certain degree, and after a certain degree you actually start getting drunk on it, don't you? Not to mention the fact that it's actually damaging to you. I mean, it creates damage to your lungs, I believe, to breathe
absolutely.
Pure oxygen after for too
If
long.
you breathe greater than 50% O2.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, greater than 50% O2 for any for 24 hours or greater, and actually even less than that you can see biochemical changes, but greater than 24 hours is what we usually say, and you can develop severe problems.
Okay.
And of course, people have considered should they sleep in hyperbaric chambers. Maybe that'll make them more intelligent by increasing the amount of partial pressure, which is the amount of oxygen pushed into the bloodstream, and thus is delivered to the cells. But then you have to look at the other side of the coin. You're delivering all of this extra oxygen. What about the people who say you need antioxidants to be smarter? You need the vitamin E, the vitamin C.
To slow down the deterioration caused by free radicals.
Mm-hmm. So here you are, you're taking in a super amount of oxygen, supposedly, and this is going to create an increase in oxidation.
Yes, but it'll also cause your brain to wear out faster.
Well, we'll take a science fiction view of that again in the classic short story, later expanded, Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes, which became the movie Charlie, directed by Ralph Nelson. There is some drug which they first discover in white mice or rats, makes them run mazes more effectively. So they give some to this fairly stupid guy, and he becomes more and more intelligent, smarter than the people that developed the drug, and then smart enough to realize that these changes are temporary and very destructive, and that before he dies, he realizes he will return to that level of idiocy. And that's the tragedy. Now, it's hard to write about someone more intelligent than the writer who's writing the story, but that's a very important story because it crystallizes that notion that there are some things that human beings aren't meant to tamper with, and if we try and screw with the way the brain works, we're at risk of destroying it. That is the conservative reaction to smart drugs is just say, no, I'd rather have beta-tetrahydroxyphenolphthaleaminopropionic acid, thank you.
But I mean, if you have a normal state, I mean, why are you trying to, in quotes, treat it?
Right.
And indeed, as you were saying, there are side effects, so we can get back to side effects. One of the popular drugs right now is supposedly vasopressin in order to enhance
the Dirk Pearson and
intelligence.
Sandy Shaw School of Better Living Through Chemistry.
Yeah,
Intelligence and orgasms.
Well, and in the this month's Omni, there is the article on smart drugs, and it really incensed me to see that the author had stated that these drugs are virtually innocuous. And so I took up her challenge, and I went to the physician's desk reference to take a look at what they said about the adverse reactions of vasopressin or pitressin, one of the drugs that the author said was most popular, and under Under adverse reactions, I see cardiac arrest, arrhythmias, depressed cardiac output, angina, myocardial ischemia, peripheral vasoconstriction leading to gangrene, many little things.
So, okay.
I mean, obviously, this would probably be in association with overdosage, but
Right.
it's clearly misleading to state that these drugs are innocuous.
Are there nutrients which it is known if you are deficient in, it will actually decrease your mental efficiency, so that listeners who are interested in reaching an optimal intelligence or an optimal level of optimal biochemical environment within which their intelligence can develop, they can make sure that they're getting at least enough of these nutrients?
One of the best established is kwashiorkor.
What's that?
It's a disease caused by inadequate nourishment, in particular inadequate protein, which means you do not have the amino acids you need to build the things that you need in your brain to have a brain properly
Now,
operate.
there must be very few cases of that in the United States.
Well, more than there ought to be.
Really? Because it was my
People are
impression that there were
being
virtually no protein deficiency disease in this country.
If
And
you-
if
I
I'm
haven't
wrong.
seen any kwashiorkor in my practice, I'll tell you. Not in Orange County, anyway.
It does occur in the United States,
Okay.
and you know, it is being a great experiment is being tried in Africa to create an entire generation of kwashiorkor kids. Those kids that survive not being killed outright by
That's
starvation will all have. I mean, the IQ will be 10 or 15 points less than it
Oh,
would have been
great.
otherwise. IQ is not the measure of intelligence,
Yes.
but that's an
I understand.
indication that you can make an entire continent stupid by politically evil behavior. The opposite of that, since we've proven that you can make people stupider en masse by bad nutrition, can you make people smarter by good nutrition? There's some evidence that the average American today is better nourished and therefore taller, lives longer, and probably is more intelligent, but we just don't know how to measure
Yeah,
But
it.
it's
I mean,
better nutrition to a point.
Yeah, I
Because
think
the,
to a point, I think it is reasonable to assume that since none of us are eating a diet which is perfect nutritionally, that we're operating at less than our optimal level of intelligence, it may be possible to increase it by a few points, you know.
That's right.
And in old age, maybe smart drugs aren't the answer, but in the Scientific American, the special issue this month, they suggest that keeping fit and keeping a low-calorie diet may be the things
So we're back to Roy
enhance-
Walford again, because he considers that the low-calorie diet is also the best way to promote longevity, and it's the
Mhm.
only approach which has been actually proven to work on all warm-blooded animals that
Right.
they've ever tried it
and
on.
preserve cognitive function for the longest period
Okay, so
possible.
we are adults. It is too late to go back and have our parents play with blocks with us to increase our intelligence. What can a listener, what can I do right now? What commitments can I make to myself? If I want to maintain optimal mental efficiency for the longest period of time in my life, what are the things I can do?
In my social milieu, there is a machine which seems to make people more intelligent
Which
the
is?
more they use it. It's called the book.
The book!
The book. It's a machine made of paper and ink, and people exposed to this machine seem to behave more intelligently.
They can read.
It is
This is an
amazing.
amazing thought. Read books. I remember Jerry Pournelle once said to me that if I wanted to guarantee my success in life, I would read a book every day. If I read a book a day, I could just about guarantee that I was going to be able to be whatever it was I wanted to be. I have not been able to get up to that level, but I consider that to be one of the soundest pieces of advice anybody ever gave me. What other things can you do? You said maintain a high level of fitness. Now, does that mean lifting weights? What kind of fitness is he talking about?
Well, just keeping yourself physically fit, walking, keeping yourself from becoming a sedentary couch potato, a little vegetable. Go out and keep up a routine that not necessarily is going to truly stress you to the point where you're going to tire, get muscle cramps, or have problems with chest pain, etc. But a reasonable regimen wherein an individual walks, let's say.
Well, walking is considered to be an ideal exercise.
Absolutely.
Lead a peripatetic existence.
Or even possibly swimming for elderly adults who are fit enough for that purpose.
Give another example of something that seems painfully obvious. Get enough sleep.
Amen.
Well, that's hard for a lot of older adults. I mean, the need for sleep remains the same, but the ability to sleep seems to decrease.
That's true.
And yet, if an adult drinks alcohol or takes sedatives to help himself go to sleep, that will actually decrease cognition.
Exactly.
It decreases REM sleep.
Yes, that too,
And,
depending on the
therefore,
specific-
if dreaming is your brain sort of downloading from one state to another from the conscious things that you've learned or noticed to sort of a deeper deeper level of consciousness, then anything that interferes with REM sleep is going to interfere with the cycle of cognition.
And, I mean, second only to the use of alcohol and drugs while you're driving, the second greatest cause of automobile accidents seems to be falling asleep at the wheel. That is, if you've been sleep deprived, you're going to fall asleep at inappropriate times.
Sure.
And one of the things that people typically say if they can walk away from an auto accident was, what a stupid thing that was. Boy, did I do something stupid.
Yes.
Clearly, if you're not getting enough sleep, you behave very stupidly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, have there been any experiments with any of these synchro-energizer sort of light and sound trying to synchronize left and right hemisphere sort of devices? Have there been any results from any of these that you know of that have been at all promising?
Well, nothing that I've heard, but are you talking about training the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain independently? As if that were possible if you have an intact corpus callosum?
Yes, sort of like that. I'm not really sure what these people are saying, but it is some attempt to entrain. But now you don't want them firing simultaneously. That's a completely rhythmic. That's not an epileptic seizure or something of this
Well,
nature.
Steve, you've neatly led us back to look at another characteristic of the pathologically intelligent savants. And that is, in this pathology of superiority, according to pneumoencephalographic studies and CAT scans and other neuropsychological studies on these savants, there seems to be typically a damage to a particular type and location of the central nervous system. It is a faulty cell assembly on the left side of the brain and a shift of dominance to the right brain. In these idiot savants, there's typically left hemisphere damage, either from actual brain injury before, during, or after birth, or from impaired or slowed cortex development from the influence of testosterone in the case of the male fetus. So cerebral dominance, yes, if one side of your brain is grossly overdeveloped, you have these apparently very high intelligent characteristics, but in the context of an overall pathological brain structure.
That would be like a frog that has one leg that's very large and powerful. He's not going to be able to jump very far, very well, and not be able to get away from anything, but my God, what a shapely limb,
Yes. Let me go back and address what you just said for a moment, because of one of the differences between men's brains and women's brains. Apparently, androgens in the developing fetus do cause a sort of effect on the left cerebral cortex of men to prevent or to retard the growth of the cerebral cortex, so that the cortex in women on the left is actually a little bit thicker than in men. Now, if what you were saying proved true or held to be the rule, then women who had their right side of the brain, relatively speaking, a little bit more developed, should be the ones who have the increased mathematical and spatial ability, because that is in the right side, but that's not the case. Men actually have a greater capacity in these characteristics.